My mother died this past weekend. She left us right before the Super Bowl. She never was much of a football fan. What she was, however, was a really amazing person. Those who knew her, who really knew her, would agree. She was one of the best. This is her when she was a little girl. By all accounts, it was a pretty great childhood. That's her mom in the bottom right-hand corner. Unfortunately, she got cancer and died. Then Dad remarried and things just weren't the same. By the time she was 15, my mom had left home and was living on her own. A few years later, she met my dad. They got married and then I was born. I love that picture of my mother in the middle there. She would stick out her tongue in many pictures over the years. It was her way of protesting the moment. You know, kind of the same way that folks flip the bird in photos these days. Personally, I like her way better. One of the things that I picked up from my mom early on was a love for Coke. These days I drink the diet version, but my mom liked it fully leaded. And while she liked it chilled, she didn't like it with ice. She thought it diluted the drink too much, and of course, if she was ordering it from a restaurant, the ice was taking up valuable real estate from the beverage itself. Smart lady, that mother of mine. In another video of mine, I talked at length about my mother's love of the soap opera Dark Shadows. And in the summertime, or if I was playing hooky from school, it was a show that she would let me watch with her. She'd crack open a couple of chilled bottles of Coke and we'd settle in for an hour of gothic fun courtesy of the rather odd citizens of Collinwood. Sadly, this treat came to an end for me when I started having nightmares about the show, and in particular a certain ghost. Still, we found other amazing shows to watch together, and as we did, she would talk to me. Early on, I discovered how nostalgic my mother was. She loved to look back on things fondly, which is kind of weird because after her mother died, there wasn't much to look back on with a great deal of fondness for her. Times were tough, and whether she wanted to be or not, so was she. Maybe that's why she could remain an optimist and be so positive. Whatever the reason, I'm grateful to her that she passed that love on to me. It was from her that I developed a love for Broadway musicals. West Side Story was a personal favorite of hers, and it became mine as well. I would play that soundtrack album incessantly when I was younger. And it was also because of her that I grew to love both the book and the movie To Kill a Mockingbird. My mom loved the book way more than the movie for some reason. She always said that the movie deviated too much from the source material, but I found the changes minor, and at least to me, they were more than made up for by Gregory Peck's tour de force performance. One of my favorite things to do when I did stay home from school was rummage through my mother's old newspaper collection. She kept the papers from important days, like the Kennedy assassination, and while I found the headlines interesting, what I really loved to do was go back and look at the TV listings from years before, as well as the pages from advertisements for movies. To this day, I still recollect the smell of those old newspapers. They were a bit musty and old-smelling, but I liked that smell, and to this day it's a smell that I associate with all things nostalgic. Years later, my mother, now a grandmother, would do her best to pass on that love for all things forgotten to my sons. As good of a mother as she was an even better grandmother. She was the kind of grandma who, when we left her with our kids, she would be upset if we came home too early and didn't give her enough time with her grandsons. There is some irony that for someone who loved to remember things so much, the thing that caused her so much pain in the end was first manifested by forgetfulness. Truthfully, I don't know whether she was afflicted with Alzheimer's or a very advanced form of dementia. Whatever it was, it made her life progressively more miserable, to the point where she wasn't even able to enjoy her granddaughters, my brother's girls, the same way that she'd enjoyed being around her grandsons years earlier. And I know that would have broken her heart if she'd been aware enough to realize it. So now that she's gone, I'll continue to carry on her legacy of remembering. And this is the woman that I choose to remember. An amazing mother and an even better, if that's possible, grandma. Just look at that smile on her face, and you'll know what I mean. So we bury my mom this Friday. It's going to be tough, but truthfully, she slipped out the door a few months back. The only thing left was for her body to catch up. Somewhere at some point during the day, I'm going to stick my tongue out at her. It will be my way of silently protesting the crappy way that this wonderful lady left us. And it will also be my way of letting her know, and myself as well, that everything's going to be okay. And then this weekend, when everything is settled down, I'll fire up a Cary Grant movie, probably my favorite wife. He was, after all, her favorite actor, and one of mine as well. For you see, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. Alright, that's it. Leave a comment if you'd like, and if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I talk about music, movies, and television, mostly from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I love you, Mom.